afternoon. I'm David Sherbuck. I'm a former Forbes reporter and editor, founder of Forbes.com, and now I'm a freelance technology journalist. And I'm joined today by Andreas Welsch from SAP. And we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and current trends in the field. How do you do?
It's awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. How did you get started in this field, Andreas?
You know, it's funny because I really first learned about AI back in 08 or 9 when I was studying for a bachelor's degree after hours. And AI was an elective at that time as part of my course program for exactly 0 credits.
Why was that?
So, who knows, right? It was so far out that I thought, well, it's either what I've seen in The Matrix or the Hollywood movies, but it's definitely something that's not readily applicable to my work in IT, managing projects and doing some automation there. Too futuristic, not tangible.
Right.
Why was I wrong?
That was a bit of a dark period in AI, and I would argue we're in a renaissance now.
I think so too, absolutely. And if we look at the recent hype since 2015, 2016, that's really where a lot of the investment, a lot of the focus, again, happened on AI. And interestingly enough, that was also the time when I finally started getting more into AI as a topic, because at SAP, it was one of the big investment areas over the next couple of years that SAP as a company has been investing in. And so I was very fortunate to be part of an investment area and growth area from a very early stage, because back then, you know, we were enabling the market, educating the market and our customers on what is machine learning even. You know, we didn't even talk about it as AI, but machine learning, and how is it different from any regular programming that you know? What are the benefits? What are the opportunities? It was really an exciting time seeing this market mature to the point where we're now. And if you think about it in terms of the Gartner hype cycle, you know, we've really climbed up that slope, and now we're in that trough of disillusionment, you might say, where people have tried it out and they have seen, and we have seen, it's actually not quite as simple as we thought just a couple of years ago. But things are maturing. People have made their experiences. They have much better understanding of the technology, what it can do, what it can't do. And I think it's just still such a fantastic and exciting space to be in, because now we get to shape what we can actually do with it.
What do you think are some of the factors that have led to this resurgence in interest and wider spread of AI and machine learning? Is it things like the cloud offering capabilities that just simply couldn't have been built one at a time in an old non-cloud model?
I believe the cloud is certainly one big factor in it. Having access to a near infinite amount of resources at scale, at a global scale, and just giving companies such a huge variety and such a huge choice of what they want to deploy, where they want to deploy it. A lot of open source frameworks that you can draw from that are excellent, that are maintained, and that, you know, quite frankly, have become the de facto standard. So it also gets easier for resources to build AI capabilities if you standardize on these things. But I also see that certainly this whole trend of big data, the early 2010s, has led to that as well, because if we now have an influx of so many data points, be it through transactional systems, be it through things like social media and sentiment we pick up, weather data, sensor data, and all the like, there's just so much information that it's not possible for one individual human being to analyze everything by themselves, or even for a team of 5 or a team of 10 to do it at the speed and the scale and the quality needed to make these decisions in business today. So introduce AI, and we're able to detect these patterns in the data to give you insights to automate certain parts of your business or business process in a way that just hasn't been possible before at that level of scale.
Well, I agree that the amount of data available and the amount being collected is just skyrocketing at present, but the analysis has always seemed to be the short supply in the equation. Look at the war for talent for data scientists, for example, and having the capabilities to look at large data pools or data lakes and extract from that some insights. Is this like the old sense in big data of data mining, where you're looking for anomalies and discoveries that you wouldn't otherwise detect?
I think in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't, right? So yes, we are still looking for patterns, but again, these systems and models are so sophisticated and so powerful that they're able to do that at a scale that hasn't been possible before. Also looking at different types of data, not just structured data in tables or text data in your systems, but really the unstructured data, be it documents, be it audio information, be it other images, video analysis. There's just so many more data pools available, kinds of data available to us. And with these technologies, we're just able to analyze them so much better. And again, at such a bigger scale than ever before.
Yeah, that's well said. That unstructured data, the video, the audio, etc., that is flowing in has so many possibilities for analysis, but it's so difficult to put into a format that it can be analyzed. Can we talk about enterprise resource planning systems? I mean, they are the central nervous system of a corporation or an organization that is trying to manage its scarce resources and to also automate sort of the accounting and the financial processes, but it's extended to nearly every function within a corporation, from HR to product development. How do you see ERP being enhanced by AI and machine learning?
So you see, AI is a core technology of any modern software, and it's no different for ERP as a category or for the products that SAP works on there specifically. And even today, there's still so many manual processes, so many paper-based processes, and there's just so much heavy lifting that individual employees and subject matter experts still need to do to get the job done. And those are not typically the types of tasks that we all look forward to doing.
Right.
It's filing your travel receipts and travel expenses, or matching information and pulling information from documents, putting it in another system, these kind of things.
I was speaking to a software company that specializes in back office healthcare billing systems, and medical coding is a profession into itself. The patient or the physician's record of the visit with the patient has to be encoded in such a way that billable information can be extracted and sent to the insurer for reimbursement, etc. That's usually been a burdensome task after the visit between the physician and the patient, where the physician has to fill out the record or dictate notes, which are then transcribed. But by applying AI or having some sort of ambient listening to the patient-physician interaction, they're able to now capture that, use natural languaging processing to pull out and code the billable elements and cut down the error rate. And that in itself, I mean, given how valuable a doctor's time is and how more time means more time with patients and less dealing with billing queries or filling out medical charts, that seems to me to be just an incredible example of the types of improvements this technology can bring to bear. But, and this is going to be the question, we as a society, maybe it's from George Orwell and Big Brother, we don't like the idea of someone listening into our conversation, of the machine making the transcription, or is the machine accurate enough to drive our car? What do you think about the current acceptance of AI and machine learning in society? And are we at a danger of constraining its expansion and extension by over-regulating it and giving in to too many fears about it? The so-called Skynet fear of truly sentient machines making decisions on their own.
Right. So look, I think if we look at people and humans and humanity as a whole, I feel there is always this fear of not being quite the pinnacle of the evolution, right? That there's something that comes after us, and that it might even be something that humans have created, like AI, for example. So to that Skynet vision. But I think also we need to look at some of the rules and regulations and more importantly, our values as a society, granted that they might vary based on the part of the world that you're in. But take these values and agree that there are certain things for which we want to use a technology like AI and others where it is not okay to use it. So think of things like the general data privacy regulations in the European Union. Article 9 of that clearly states what types of data cannot and must not be processed with AI and are protected. So whether it's your religious views and beliefs, whether it is political views, whether it's sexual orientation, these kind of things that must not be used. And by the way, this is also how SAP approaches this, that we strictly adhere to these standards. Right. Now, self-driving cars, Skynet, these are all things that touch the lives of our consumers and as consumers. But if we bring it back to something like business processes, there's a real tangible opportunity, right? And this kind of AI might not be as flashy as recognizing cancerous cells in X-rays or the like. But to your point of the example that you gave earlier in healthcare, in saving people's time and saving expensive resources time, that's the same concept that applies here as well. So if you take an example from finance, for example, there's one scenario that I'm quite familiar with, and that it is in accounts receivable, where you receive payments from your bank, or most of all from your customers, but then get them from the bank in the morning, and now the accountants need to match this information to open invoices that you have in the system. And it's been like this for years and for decades. I got this $100,000, which invoices does this match? Right. There's really no need for a person to do this manually. And certainly there have been rules in place in the system to do this, but they're not very flexible, or they're rather cumbersome to maintain. So introduce AI, and we're able to automate a lot of this matching and really get that queue of maybe several hundreds of items down to maybe several dozens at most. So really saving time. But the key, and I think that's also what you asked here, is you need to make sure that people affected by the change and by the change of how they work are part of this process, that they are aware of why and how you want to introduce a certain technology like AI, what its limitations are, where it can help them become better and become more effective. And that's where you've seen the strongest bond and the strongest trust in these systems as well.
Seems so obvious, but I guess as the technology is developed, oftentimes that end user, that expert is omitted by bringing them in early. And it's interesting, in the early days of artificial intelligence, and I began covering the field in the 1980s, it was all about expert systems back then, of capturing, let's say, the baker's recipe for making cookies and being able to automate that. In some ways, capturing within the machine the knowledge of the person. We seem to have gone beyond that, though. We don't talk about expert systems or decision support systems anymore, the way that AI dominated that conversation 40 years ago. Now it seems to be far more, I won't say taken for granted, but there's so many examples of artificial intelligence at work, from the prosaic like autocomplete If I begin typing into Google, it just takes a guess. And that is, in some forms, artificial intelligence. I'm not threatened by it, it's a convenience. But am I willing to do the same behind the wheel of a car and take my hands off of that wheel and trust the car to be 100% safe, etc.? I don't know how long it's going to take for us to get there as a society, if ever.
Well, I feel trust is built when a system behaves in congruence with the expectations that its user has. So I feel the more examples we see that this is actually working as intended, the more likely it will be for us to build trust in it as well.
Right.
The more examples we will have and live through and see where, maybe one of your friends has a self-driving car and says, hey, why don't we take a ride on the interstate? And I'll take the hands off the wheel and you can see what this looks like. But at every point in time, I can jump in and countersteer if I need to. Well, maybe that's an example where you build confidence as well. Hey, if Joe thinks this makes sense, right, then maybe I might give it a try as well. So in a sense, it might also be the penguin effect. I don't know if you heard about this, yeah. But penguins on a piece of ice are very careful and cautious to jump into the cold water because there might be a polar bear there and some danger. But if one jumps and they make it, maybe the second one jumps and a third one and a fourth one. So the whole platform effect and first mover effect and others joining could be very relevant there as well.
What do you think what are some great examples that you think exist today of AI in action, and what are you looking forward to in the future?
So I think just looking at my newsfeed these last few weeks and last few months, these really large language models that OpenAI, for example, puts out there, whether it's GPT-3 or it's DALL-E 2, are really, really impressive, I feel, both as a professional in the space, but also as a consumer. So being able to interact with the system through natural language to get it to produce something that I, as a person, maybe could not conceive or could not do as quickly and as accurately, I think there's a lot of potential. So I remember trying out some of the first demos of GPT-3, I think it was 2 years ago. And one of the examples was describe this non-disclosure agreement in a language that a 5-year-old would understand. And it was amazing to see because it was like, hey, you make a promise between each other that you are not going to share the secret, and you both say that you adhere to it. Wow. And that's more or less the essence, right? So having children myself, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's probably how I would try to explain it as well. But now think about this in more complex terms of contracts and clauses and schedules and addendums and many more things. So there's a lot of power, a lot of opportunity behind it, and certainly with things like DALL-E as well, being it more tangible and more visible there as well. Yeah.
That's a fascinating point that I hadn't considered, is the impact of natural language processing on contracts. Because in many ways, a contract is a reflection of an organization's policies. No, you may not use my likeness on a billboard, or whatever prohibitions or whatever permissions are granted in that contract. But getting consistency, but also coming to, in a negotiation, of reconciling two different drafts or approaches to a contract, it seemed to me that would be an immense boon to procurement, to legal departments, and cut out countless hours. But also might give me an NDA, like you said, a promise that I won't tell your secrets to anyone else. I'd sign that NDA.
Correct, absolutely, yeah. Or even searching through contracts for similar information or dissimilar information. I think there are a lot of opportunities there as well to use natural language.
Andreas, I'm conscious we're coming close to the end of our scheduled time. Are there any points you'd like to raise that I haven't asked you, or thoughts you'd like to leave end on?
Thanks for the opportunity. So over the last 6 years in this space, I've seen AI from different perspectives. I've seen it as a business developer, helping educate customers and business experts on what is AI, what can you do with it, what should an ideal project look like, where are opportunities that you should go after. I've seen it as a leader of an AI center of excellence. How can we bring more innovation into our own products along those same lines? What should we prioritize? What should we go after? How can we prototype this? And how can we get this to market? And right now I have the opportunity to look at it more strategically as well. In which areas should SAP invest in AI? One of the things that I see that has been a common thread is really involve people from the very beginning, build a community of champions, of multipliers that help you, sing your songs and win more trust and win more engagement. It also seems that wherever you look, different companies, different industries, different regions, people are going through the same thing. So if you're experiencing some challenges, chances are that there are others that are going through the same thing as well, or have gone before you. So look for them, see if you can connect with them and learn from them as well. I've been creating content on LinkedIn for the last 18 months, roughly, on this topic of how can you set up and scale your AI, COE, and projects, because I feel so passionate about it, and I do want to help others with that as well. So if you're looking for a perspective, look for the Intelligence Briefing on LinkedIn and a bi-weekly live stream called What's the Buzz, to learn from leaders and hands-on experts in the industry, how they have done it, and what you can apply to your own journey and in your own business. So again, something I'm really, really passionate about that I want to bring to a much wider audience.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll make sure that we include links to that material on your website and LinkedIn. But Andreas, thank you very much for taking the time today. I appreciate it and really enjoyed the conversation.